Massive, massive. Get in here, kill her. Oh my god! Is she cheating? No, that Vindicta was not cheating. That's really how much damage she's doing right now. This is a real ranked match that I was playing, and it is definitely somewhat of an exaggerated example, because, well, oh my god, look at the amount of stacks she has. She has more than 200% weapon damage just from her ult, which is far more weapon damage than she was getting from all of her weapon investment and items combined. She had about 133% weapon damage from her items and investment, which is nothing to scoff at, but, you know, she had almost double that from her sniper rifle. And again, this is somewhat of an exaggerated example, but, well, part of why she was able to achieve this is because of just how strong Vindicta is at snowballing right now. So there's some pretty crazy math behind why Vindicta is able to scale up to the most ludicrous levels of M1 damage that it's possible to have in the game right now. She has a bunch of different things that all work in her favor to mean that she can delete a Victor with Juggernaut, a whole bunch of healing, a whole bunch of green scaling in 1 second flat. And, well, the first thing to take a look at is, of course, her actual gun damage itself, which has a very interesting mechanic, as you can see here. It scales with spirit power, which is very unique and very, very powerful. So let's just buy a Boundless Spirit as an example here to simulate the type of spirit power that you'll be able to accumulate over the course of a match. This will actually bring our bullet damage up to about 15.1 here with no boons. This scales ludicrously well when you start to get some stacks from Assassinate, which is the next thing we need to talk about. Drifter wishes he could have an ability this good. So, Drifter, as you guys know, is a character who gets permanent weapon damage over the course of a game from his blood scent here. He gets 3% permanent weapon damage per stack. But the thing is, the enemies have to be isolated when he kills them in order to get that stack. So in larger team fights, he can't really get stacks unless the enemies are ulted by Eternal Night. And it's only 3%, which, you know, that's still really good. And Drifter is a really good character right now. But Vindicta gets double that at base with Assassinate here, 6% weapon damage per kill. And she also has a little bit of a grace period after hitting the enemies with the sniper rifle where they can die and she will still get a stack. So if I just tag Infernus here, shoot him in the head, I got the 6% weapon damage after hitting them with the sniper, so you don't actually have to finish them with this ability. And that means that if a teammate finishes them off, she will also get this 6% weapon damage. So this passive synergizes much better with her team in a larger team fight where there are multiple enemies, multiple teammates, and they're all trying to get kills. Because her team can actually help her with this, and even if there are multiple enemies around, she will still be able to get just a ton of weapon damage out of Assassinate. The actual ability itself doesn't even need to do that much damage, but of course it also does a pretty good amount of damage, especially in the early to mid game if all you get is a simple rapid recharge, which drastically increases the amount of sniper shots that you have while also providing spirit power to it. But then, here's the icing on the cake for Vindicta. Notice the tier 3, 4% extra weapon damage per kill. And this applies retroactively to all her stacks. If I go ahead and max this out, my bonus on top of the ability, as you can see, has gone up to 10. So all of the stacks that she gets in the early game becomes supercharged when she upgrades the Assassinate to tier 3. So if you get, 10 kills over the course of the first, 20 minutes of the match, that's not unreasonable at all if you're actively going around roaming and ganking, right? That'll give you 100% extra weapon damage, which is the equivalent of investing 22,000 souls into the weapon category. That is utterly insane. But the thing about these weapon stacks is, well, the more weapon stacks you get, the easier it is to actually get more weapon stacks, because you're doing more damage to the enemies, and thus you are able to get more stacks, right? It's a vicious cycle of death for Vindicta, where, hey, now I've got 30% weapon damage from this, now I'm going to be doing way more damage to Infernus here, and I'm going to kill him faster, and I'm going to get more stacks, etc., etc. The ramping is just insane. I made a copy of the Vindicta player's build that I went against just to use as an example. There are a lot of Vindicta builds out there, but you'll notice some common themes. She, of course, gets even more weapon damage from items like opening rounds, which makes it easier to hit her shots and do more damage. She'll get long range, which is just super good on her because she likes to play at a distance anyways. And bear in mind, she has the best fall-off in the game, because she's a sniper, obviously. So she actually gets to take these fights from much farther away than someone like a Wraith or Venator, which means that her damage actually feels like it's extraordinarily more impactful than those other characters, just because this fall-off is so good, and long range improves that even more, gets her even more weapon damage, as if she didn't already have enough, and then she just gets to stack up some fire rate as well, and this fire rate is just a huge force multiplier for her because it stacks multiplicatively with the weapon damage that she gets from Assassinate. She has 40% weapon damage in my case right now, and then that gets multiplied by the 32%, 10%, 20% fire rate all here, and so I'm able to just now kill these people exceptionally quickly, tag him with my sniper rifle, and increase my weapon damage just like that, just compounding all of our damage more and more and more. And as if that wasn't good enough, she's got spirit damage too. So she can also add a healthy amount of spirit damage per bullet on flight here. I'm doing about 48-49 damage per shot against this Infernus, and flight will add an extra 16 or 17 on top of that, with absolutely zero upgrades. That's not bad. That is a pretty sizable proportional increase here. We are getting, what is that, close to a 40% increase almost, technically? That is really good. And it also means that Vindicta isn't completely hard-countered by Metal Skin, because this makes you immune to bullets, but it doesn't make you immune to spirit damage, and the spirit damage component will still work. And this spirit damage scales really well, because once you get the tier 3 here, you get plus 10 spirit damage and increased spirit scaling. So now I've got 31 damage per bullet, and I've also got, you know, all this regular bullet damage. And it's not unreasonable to get this tier 3 upgrade at about this 11k soul value. So let's take the upgrade off of Assassinate here. I'm still working with 30% weapon damage from that. And yeah, look at the amount of extra damage we get on our bullets here just from the flight spirit power. That is just kind of crazy. Look at all of that. And we can scale that up by getting some more spirit stuff. We can get a Quicksilver reload just for spirit investment here. We can get Surge of Power. We don't even need to necessarily put it on the flight. That still gives us spirit power from scaling. And also we can get Merc Mag later in the game, and that'll add even more spirit damage onto our weapon. And we can casually just almost double our damage output here with Merc Mag and flight. And that hybrid damage output is very hard to counter because, well, if you want to counter it with resistances, you need to get 2 resistance items, not 1. Bullet Resilience and Spirit Resilience. Or shell out for Colossus, I guess, and that only has a temporary window. Or you can try to disarm her, but obviously she can dispel that, and Dispel Magic is not unreasonable to get on Vindicta. You can also try to lower her fire rate with Juggernaut or any other fire rate decreasing options, and that's okay and it helps, but only up to a point. As you could see when I got shredded as Victor in the opening clip with Juggernaut and Suppressor. Oh boy. The big counter to Vindicta's flight, of course, is to try and crowd control her out of it, and, you know, you can just get a knockdown, put it on her, she'll fall out of the sky. And that's why every single Vindicta player has Counterspell baked into their builds now, because you can Counterspell knockdown and a whole bunch of other garbage in the air, and ever since they allowed Vindicta to actually use melee stuff in the air, Counterspell has been an incredible option on her. There actually used to be a time in the past where this wasn't possible. And so you would have to cancel flight to Counterspell. You'd have to buy Dispel Magic and dispel the knockdown, but then Dispel Magic doesn't really work against some of the other harder forms of CC. So, yeah. That buff actually ended up being really massive for Vindicta and made it so much harder to counter her while she's in flight, which means that she gets to benefit from all of this incredible damage so much more consistently. It gives her a huge vantage point, and it just makes her an absolute powerhouse. And also, I hardly have boons for this item value. If I actually ramp Vindicta up in boons to the current item value that I have, and I've got about 6 kills right here, which is, you know, very few as far as a regular match is concerned. I mean, we just absolutely start shredding them. And we can throw in the last piece of the puzzle here for Vindicta's damage scaling, which is, of course, the Crow. So this will reduce enemy resistances by 6% for both. So that is a resistance shred for all combined aspects of her damage here on her gun. And when you upgrade this, you get some really nice utility and other things. You get 35% healing reduction, which, you know, saves you from having to buy any of the anti-heal items, whether it's Healbane or shelling out the big bucks for something like Atoxic bullets. This is utterly phenomenal. And then you can get more bleed damage because, by the way, this does percent damage. So if you want to throw this at an Abrams who has a, you know, Colossus and Fortitude like I've given him here, the Crow's going to add a pretty healthy chunk of damage too. And then with the tier 3, you just buff up those resistances to minus 14%, and you increase the duration from 5 seconds to 7 seconds, giving you ample time to absolutely shred the crap out of even the tankiest targets. And resistance shred is another value that is multiplicative to everything you're doing. So you know all that weapon damage that I've got 80% extra weapon damage right now? That is multiplied by the 14% shred that I have here. So it ends up being an insanely powerful buff. Even though, you know, 14 might not seem like that big of a number, it is still huge. And if it puts the enemies into the negative resistances, their health is just gone. And, you know, just for good measure, she's also got this, which allows her to trap enemies in an area so she can just laser them. And it's also a good tool for keeping the enemies away from her if they are diving her. Now, that being said, Vindicta is still the type of character that is a little bit easier to dive, especially when she's not in the sky. Now, when she is in the sky, it's a different story, because being up here, you know, it does make her an easy target for a lot of gun builds and stuff, but if I'm that Abrams right now and I don't have Phantom Strike, I'm never going to hit her with any of my abilities. Like, I'm just screwed. And the same is true for anyone like a Victor or anyone like that. You need to invest in a lot of crowd control or a lot of, you know, very expensive items to actually reach her up here on a lot of those characters to be in effective range for your own abilities to start popping off. And so all of this just comes together to create a character who is ridiculously strong right now and ridiculously unfun to play against if she happens to get going. And the particularly malicious thing about Vindicta is that, you know, you can play a really good game, right? On a lane where Vindicta is not. And if your teammates feed the Vindicta, then, yeah, good luck. Good luck. There's almost nothing you can do, because her scaling is so strong. So now I've got about 12 eliminations here with Assassinate, and, I mean, yeah, the damage per second is just absolutely off the charts here. 5,000 damage in just a couple of seconds to one of the tankiest characters you can have. This guy has about, you know, only 4,600 HP. Yeah, it's pretty crazy. And we're not even full builds yet, so needless to say, her damage is absurd. I've talked a lot about how good her damage is and how you can scale it, so if you want to use this video to wreak havoc in your games, I mean, I guess there's nothing I can do to stop you. But, you know, I've also complained about this because I do find her to be very annoying, and she probably does need some nerfs, but the question, of course, we should be asking is, despite all of this, you know, is she actually winning games, or in practice does it turn out that she is a lot weaker and that she's a lot harder to get value out of? And so that's where we can go to a website like StatLocker, where we get to see the win rates of all the characters in the game. And if we just sort by all ranks here, we get to see our usual suspects at the top, like Seven, McGinnis, Graves. For some reason, these characters are just always here. Victor's doing particularly well right now, and I know it sounds hypocritical for me to complain about Vindicta because she, you know, beat me while I was playing Victor, but I haven't played Victor in a really long time. I was just trying him out again, so, like, you know, maybe it's hypocritical, but, like, I'm not much of a Victor player anyways, so I think we can ignore that fact. But, yeah, then we come down to the A tier here, and, oh, well, look who it is. It's the character we've been complaining about. She is doing exceptionally well on win rate right now, one of the highest win rates in the game, even above the Jacob Lash himself, my goat. But this is only all ranks, right? So how does this change when we actually look at people in the top ranks? Well, we can come over here to the top 1% ranked, top 5% ranked, top 10% ranked, and let's just go in the middle here, top 5% ranked. And, well, who are people playing up here? Well, we do still have a lot of other characters here, but Vindicta is still doing really, really well. She's actually about where Drifter is, 50.3, 50.9%, and yeah, they both have these weapon damage scaling attributes to them. So clearly Vindicta is indeed doing very well. She does fall off a little bit here at top 5% ranked, but funnily enough, if we go back up to top 1% ranked, she actually climbs again here. She is actually right around 7, but with a substantially higher pick rate than 7. And that's another thing that is important to look at when you're looking at powerful characters, because a character can have a really high win rate, but almost nobody is picking them, and so the data isn't really showing that they are super meta, because if they were super meta, everyone would be picking them. And so if we sort by pick rate here, yeah, Vindicta is also getting picked a ton. So she has a high win rate, higher than Wraith here actually, and she has a very high pick rate. You know, she's up there with the likes of Billy, Bebop, Lash, Drifter, characters who we all can agree are very, very strong. And so I think it's fair to make the claim that she does need some kind of either nerf or readjustment because of the fact that this gun damage is extraordinarily obnoxious. And a funny thing about Vindicta is that for the people who do use cheats, she is their go-to character because of just how effectively she is able to ramp up her damage higher than anyone else in the game if she's actually able to get these stacks. Now, the big downside of Vindicta is that if you're not able to get these stacks early, then she is pretty bad compared to some of the other gun builds in the game. But Vindicta players don't actually need to do much in the early game besides, you know, just roam around, coordinate with their team and have their team just go jump somebody, and then she just tags them once with this, they die, she gets a stack, and that helps her to snowball into the late game. And once you've got just a couple of stacks, snowballing is just a million times easier. So if I were in charge of nerfing Vindicta, I would do a couple of things. First of all, if you want to keep the spirit scaling, that's fine, but at the same time, I don't think too many people will miss it if this is gone, because this is providing just a little bit of extra raw power that makes her substantially stronger when she actually scales with these percent-based tools later in the game. And the second thing I would do, just straight up, obviously, nerf assassinates weapon damage per kill. Like, Drifter's fine with 3%. She has more than triple that. And it's retroactive, too, for all of her stacks in the early game. So, if you wanted to, what the devs could do is do something similar to what they did for Mo and Krill, where Mo and Krill's scaling on his buff here actually scales, I believe, with his boons, right? Yeah, his boons. So, you know, the later into the game, the more health you get, but those stacks early on, they don't provide you as much health. And this has been a very fair way to balance combo. They could do something similar with Vindicta, and if they wanted to even keep the tier 3 bonus and make that just, you know, scale with boons but slightly higher, they could do that. But the fact that all of these early game kills translate into just a major power bump once you get that tier 3 upgrade later in the game, it's really, really, really strong and really scary and tough to fight. And I do seriously, genuinely wonder why she needs so much more weapon damage than Drifter. That's the big thing that just feels very strange to me. Especially because, again, Drifter's already strong with 3%. Like, what if this was, I don't know, 4%, and then at the tier 3, it ramped up to 6%? That would probably still be really strong. So that's definitely the other thing I would nerf. But what can you do against Vindicta right now? Because, well, clearly I failed to counter her effectively in that game of mine, and so I've gone digging for a bunch of counterplay options that you can use against this notoriously frustrating character. As mentioned earlier, knockdown is something that is very helpful, and if you only have one knockdown on your team, she's easily going to be able to counterspell that. So get 2 knockdowns. Coordinate with your team. Tell them, hey, alright, this Vindicta's going to be a problem. Why don't, like, multiple of us get a knockdown? And be specific. You can call out someone else on your team, be like, hey, Dynamo, get a knockdown for Vindicta, I'll get one too. We'll knock her out of the sky and kill her, because she is very vulnerable when she's not in the sky and she's not melting you. She is a glass cannon, and so if you can survive her damage by just crowd controlling her out of it, then you'll be able to beat her up very effectively. She does not have a lot of health scaling. She only gets up to 1800 at max boons, and due to her glass cannon-y nature, she doesn't often get very many green items. And of those green items, I mean, neither of these provide her with particular particularly much health, and they give her no resistances whatsoever. So yeah, just bursting her down is also a very effective way to deal with her. And another thing you can do, especially if you're a support, is get a disarming hex for her. As mentioned earlier, Metal Skin isn't as effective against Vindicta because it only applies to the weapon damage component, and a lot of her damage also comes from spirit power from Flight and later Mercurial Magnum. So if you get Metal Skin, you're only really countering half her damage. It's still 50% damage reduction, it's not terrible, but, you know, Disarming Hex completely prevents her from firing her gun, and if she can't fire her gun and she doesn't have a Dispel magic, then yeah, that is just insanely oppressive and you will kill her. And if she does get a Dispel magic for you, that's still, you know, forcing her to delay her other damage power spikes, and so it's still very worthwhile. Because, you know, she might have to get a Dispel Magic and her Counterspell that she already had baked into her build, and that's 6,400 souls that she can't spend on Burst Fire and Surge of Power. And Dispel Magic is actually very good against Vindicta too. It's just a very good all-arounder item, but of course she has 2 debuffs that she puts on you with the Crow Familiar and the Stake. So if you're having trouble, you know, because she roots you and then you can't get away, and then she puts the Crow Familiar on you and you just shred, well, get Dispel Magic, you can potentially dispel both of them at the same time, and that'll free you from the Stake while also taking away a huge component of her damage. Oh, and also, you can curse Vindicta, and, well, that'll take her out of her flight, as you just saw there. Curse is really the ultimate anti-carry weapon. If one character is being too strong, buy a curse, and, well, it disarms them, it silences them, it completely interrupts them, which in Vindicta's case, takes her out of one of her most powerful damage tools. And, of course, the fact that it also takes her out of the sky means that she will be vulnerable on the ground, where you, as Abrams, can pummel her to death. So that is kind of the ultimate tool that you can use against her, and any other character that is just being ridiculously overpowered. And in a similar vein to Disarming Hex, if you are playing someone who is a bit tankier and can afford to take a hit or two, then you can get Juggernaut to lower her fire rate, which, you know, fire rate reduction is more impactful in this case because she does spirit damage and gun damage on her weapon. Unfortunately, though, as you can see here, plated armor does not stop the spirit damage component of her gun either, so yeah, unfortunately that doesn't work nearly as well as you would hope it would. But yeah, I tell you what, after playing against Vindicta a bunch recently in Ranked, I don't want to do it again. I think I'm gonna start banning her because, oh god. She's been tormenting me as of recently, and I felt the need to make a video about it. So let me know what you think about Vindicta in the comments section down below. Do you agree that she is too strong? Do you agree with how I would nerf her? Or do I just have massive skill issue? Let me know in the comments section down below. But personally, I do think it is interesting to talk about her because she is a very good example of how ridiculous damage scaling can get in this game if you have the right tools for the job. So yeah, this is kind of a mix of me complaining about Vindicta, me teaching about why Vindicta is so crazy, and teaching how to counter her, so hopefully it's all been helpful. Make sure to like this video if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new around here and you want to see more content like this from me, and I will see you all next time. Peace out.